Eco Forward is the Way Forward's ethically made t-shirt collection produced by the local Balinese community. Each t-shirt is constructed using 100% certified organic cotton, hand-dyed using non-toxic natural plant pigments, printed using water-based ink, and distributed in compostable packaging. But even more importantly, the kind people that make each t-shirt are treated with dignity and paid a respectable living wage, because that is the way forward.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Way Forward podcast with your host, Alec Zeck. This episode, I decided to feature myself. I was interviewed a couple of weeks ago by the guys at Alfa Vedic, Mike Winter and Dr. Barre Lando, and it was an amazing conversation. And it's not too often on this podcast that I'm able to speak my piece and give my perceptions on everything going on. So I decided to go ahead and throw in an episode where they interviewed me. So without further ado, here is the episode featuring myself being interviewed by the guys from Alfa Vedic. Much love, everyone.
Burn all this hate away. Hot sauce on everything.
Only one thing ever mattered: helping people. I witnessed how, under the forces exerted by modern civilization, the health and mental well-being of those close to me were wasting away. This compelled me to study widely, from Feng Shui to Vastu to quantum physics. I discovered that gemstones and metals in certain constellations emit waves that create the space for regenerating body and spirit. This is how Soma Vedic came into being. Just as minerals can be used to generate electricity or to use magnetism, precious stones have qualities that make them prized treasures throughout human history. Following years of development, we today have tens of thousands of satisfied customers who enjoy lower stress levels and sleep more soundly, and whose lives have changed for the better. I know it sounds unbelievable, but that's how the invention of the light bulb must have sounded in its day. Nikola Tesla was right when he said the day science begins to study non-physical phenomena, it will make more progress in one decade than in all the previous centuries of its existence. That's exactly what I did. And if it will help a single person, it was all worth it. If you want to wake up full of energy and looking forward to tackling a new day, Soma Vedic is here to help you.
And Alec, just so delighted to have you here. You know, I've been wanting to talk to you. I've kind of followed your work from afar a little bit. So this will be a really fun conversation. And Mike, I can echo your sentiments. You know, the people that have showed up here lately on the farm are just amazing. People with great skill sets also, you know, really helping us accomplish a lot of work. So I'm just always amazed at the caliber of people that are out there supporting us, and just kind of keeps us pumped, you know, and that we know the universe has our back, you know, just in the nick of time when we feel a little overwhelmed, somebody shows up. But Alec, thanks so much for being here with us today. And, you know, I have to be honest, if it was just you and I'd have my druthers and just talk about handball. You know, I know you're quite the handball champ. And I played a lot of handball, you know, is to develop quickness, you know, in the old football days about 9 million years ago. And so, you know, but that's all fun stuff. And I know you're, you know, really involved on the activism level. And, you know, I kind of got dragged out into the public a little bit because of my background in bioterrain medicine. And, you know, I have pretty unshakable beliefs based on what I learned firsthand with my own eyes and clinical experience. And so, you know, I get in a lot of talks with people that approach it more academically. I'm more of a hands-on clinician kind of guy. What works, works. And if it doesn't work, I don't even care to talk about it. So the point is, though, is that, you know, there's a little bit of disagreement even within our own circles. You know, you got the germ theorists versus the bioterrain folks. And, you know, honestly, again, I have my beliefs that I'm pretty sure about, but to me, it really doesn't matter because we're really all on the same team. And the thing that's most important to me, rather than getting into minutia on academics, is that it's number one about freedom of choice and also having the free flow of information in order to make an informed choice. And that's all I care about. And then if people decide whatever or want to argue academics, great, have a ball. Now, I know you're involved a lot with, freedom of choice and everything. Maybe, Mike, since you kind of brought it up there, the law of one, we kind of like to go into that kind of subject matter too. Do you think we can maybe sort of lead in with wherever we're going today with maybe what that means to you, the law of one, and then maybe after the fact, we can extrapolate and see how that might have anything to do with current events?
Yeah, that'd be a good starting point. Thank you both for having me. This is an honor. I've respected and followed both of your work for this whole past year and beyond that. So to be able to speak with both of you, and Barre, to be able to meet you virtually, hopefully in person at some point too, would be great on that ski trip we were talking about. But yeah, we can start with the law of one. And, for me, the law of one was so transformational in my own personal healing journey. I had already sort of dealt with the health aspect of things, seeing my mom, who was harmed by the psychiatry industry or the psychiatric side of allopathic medicine, and then meeting Dr. Kelly Brogan, who is a, quote, pseudoscientific quack that spreads, quote, misinformation. And my mom adopted Kelly's approach to healing, and within a few months began reversing all of her symptoms. And her symptoms previous to that were multiple suicide attempts in and out of mental hospitals. And it was such a nefarious thing because we thought that anytime she was experiencing her low moments, that the drugs weren't working. Anytime she was experiencing her high moments, we're like, oh, the drugs are working properly. And it was just this downward spiral. So long story short, my mom heals. And then my wife, who had previously been diagnosed with lupus and rheumatoid arthritis, adopts this same approach that my mom did, more so on the autoimmune side of things, obviously, begins reversing all of her symptoms as well. So those two things really sent me down a spiral of questioning the nature of health and disease beginning in 2016, having not healed much of my childhood trauma yet. That came later on when I was playing professional handball in Germany around late 2017, early 2018. I was sort of by myself for the first time in a long time, only going to and from practice, playing with a professional team there while in the Army. So to give some context, I was in the U.S. Army World-Class Athlete Program, so I've never been in combat or anything like that. Most of my Army career that I had was spent as a professional athlete. But getting into childhood trauma healing and really figuring out who and what I am, that came at the same time that I discovered by chance the law of one. And now that I'm out of the Army, I can say this. I was in Colorado and I popped some shrooms by myself, and I was sitting in a bedroom looking out at the stars, and there's no light pollution in Crested Butte. There's no light pollution whatsoever. I was really looking up at the stars, and I was seeing like this grid that wove through everything. Like it would connect to each individual star that I was looking at, connect to the mountain peaks that I could see the silhouette, connect to the earth, connect to me. And I had this thought that kept popping into my head, as many people do when they experience these plant medicines. And it was all is one, all is one. We are all one thing that is modulating and experiencing itself in an infinite number of unique ways. And I looked up obsessively on Google, what does this mean? The next day, all is one, all is one. And I came across www.lawofone.info. And it stuck out to me immediately. And then I just read the summary of what the law of one was about. And even just reading this summary, it brought about so many eternal truths, things that had never been verbalized to me before that I had already thought, even in my previous evangelical, and I say that very loosely, evangelical Christian upbringing. It wasn't really much of that. But the point is, even in that upbringing, I had always had these questions lingering in the back of my mind about the true nature of reality, whether reincarnation was real, whether like where we actually came from. Did human beings evolve here naturally? Did some of us evolve here naturally? Were some of us put here by beings of higher realms? And the law of one answered so many of those questions for me. And this is a really cool experience and story to tell, actually. So in the midst of me reading the law of one, I had a dream one night. And this dream was still to this day one of the most profound dreams I've had in my entire life. And this dream that I had was I was sitting and playing a game, and it's a very lucid dream. I remember it, and it was like I was experiencing it in reality. And across from me, across the table, was my grandfather, who I had previously had a very bad relationship with. My family had dealt with a lot of generational trauma. My grandpa was very abusive to my dad. My dad was very abusive to me. And remember, this is in the midst of healing my childhood trauma, the stuff that I experienced at the hands of my father. I'm looking at my grandpa sitting across from me, and we're talking about in the dream whether we believe reincarnation is real. And my grandpa says he thinks maybe it is. And my grandpa's a very fundamentalist, Orthodox Christian. But in the dream, it's like I was talking to his authentic self, and he said he thinks reincarnation was real. And I got the urge to look at him and say, Grandpa Danny, I love you. And keep in mind, in reality, this is a person I wasn't presently talking to because of just the trauma that we had experienced. And in the dream, I just felt it deep within myself and I felt it to say, I love you. I love you. And then he said, I love you too. And he started crying. And that moment, I rose out of my body, and it was an experience of me accepting my grandfather and then also my father through like the generational trauma of what they had done and what they're continuing to do in many ways, but accepting them for who and what they were and loving them regardless. Still with setting a boundary and not allowing them to impose their will upon me, but like basically the principle of universal acceptance. The next day, I read a passage in the Law of One where it talks about how Ra and these positively oriented beings inspire people who are seeking in the direction of the law of one, meaning that they're seeking these universal truths that we are all one, and that we are to treat other not as other, but as other self, meaning that they are just an extension of the creator as we are. So we treat them with love and compassion, regardless of who they are. And Ra replied, this is the very next day after my dream, Ra replied, we approach people through insights that they get, and then most often dreams. It was the day after I had this phenomenal dream. And the part that I left out in this dream is after my grandpa and I embraced and I said, I love you to him. I like lifted out of my body in the dream. And I experienced, the only thing I can describe it as is a Kundalini Awakening, where like I felt a vibration from the base of my spine up to my crown chakra. But the craziest part is I woke up in actual reality and I was still vibrating. Like I felt the vibration running through me. My wife was upstairs because my son had woken up in the middle of the night, and I ran up to her, and it was like 5:30 in the morning. And I said, Kylie, I don't know what just happened, but I'm still vibrating right now. And I just had this dream. I have to tell you about it. And then, like I said, I read that passage the next day. So that's when I knew that even if the law of one and everything that it teaches is fake, or if someone wants to believe it's not real, it still has a profound effect in how we approach life and how we approach reality, in that all things are one. And from that fundamental principle, you can view life in a way that you are automatically going to be loving towards other people and live in a symbiotic fashion with other people, regardless of differences, and with your environment as well too, live in a very loving manner, because you view all things as an extension of the creator, not better than, not worse than, not different than. You wouldn't infringe or impose upon someone else. You also, with a balance, would not allow someone else to impose their will upon others. So long story short, this led me to my, like, these law of one principles and the way that I view reality, along with natural health, healing my trauma, having dealt with narcissistic abuse so much in my life, dealt with manipulation, dealt with someone trying to frame things in a certain way that aren't true and observed reality, right? Like frame your perception in a way that doesn't meet what you're actually experiencing. Having all that come into optimal solution, basically in 2019, having done so much trauma healing, my mom and I were talking like, what did we go through all this for? Like, how is this going to apply? And how can we help people with this? And then sure enough, 2020 comes, COVID hits. We have narcissistic abuse being inflicted upon all of humanity collectively, right? Trying to manipulate the narrative and get people to not trust what they're observing and experiencing with their own lived experience and their own eyes. And then we have the pharmaceutical industry who is behind that, imposing their will upon everyone else and all the actors that come with that, all the big central banks and government. And then we have natural health principles that we had adopted 4 to 5 years earlier. And we had seen the transformational effects of stepping away from the allopathic system and adopting this approach to natural health, where you can thrive and be vibrant outside of pharmaceutical products. And now I'm sort of looking at it in a way that those products are not beneficial at all, ever. That's a conversation for another time. But the point is, COVID hits, and I decide, because of my experiences, I had to start speaking. So that's what compelled me to speak.
Well, we're glad you decided to speak, because you've got a lot of great things to say. So the law of one, in the way you're describing, I think you brought up some key points about dreaming, and of course, other cultures consider this the dream time, and what we consider real is the dream. And I don't know about you, but the more those lines become blurred, it seems like things out here and what we consider real seem to change more rapidly. And they also seem to change more according to maybe what I personally would like to see as a vision for my life and the planet that I live on. So I guess the real, I don't even want to call it a battle, because it's not a battle, only if we make it that way. But I guess the real issue today is that certain groups of people are trying to keep us in that dream time and just keep us stagnated in this and mired down, so that we really don't, understand what the true dream time is, so we can manipulate and create from there, which is what we do. Now, there's also one thing with the what you're talking about, where they call the creator. There's just one creator, one creation. But then there's also these distortions that come about along the way. Are these is your understanding that these are purposeful, designed by the creator, or things that we overlay the creator's creation with?
Yeah. So in my understanding of it, the way it works is we have the one infinite creator, which is the source of all things. Nothing exists outside of it. Nothing can possibly exist outside of it. So even, and this is a tough one for people to deal with, even the darker elements that we are dealing with in this earthly plane are part of that one infinite creator. They play a role, and we can talk about the role that I think that they're playing for ultimately for our soul development. But the way that these distortions are designed, an example of that being the distortion of free will. Free will is a distortion in that at our source, the fundamental aspect of what we are the creator. That is what each of us is. That is what this mouse is. That is what this cup is. Everything is a piece of the creator. But the distortion of free will, so that the creator can experience itself more authentically while representing us as what Ra calls third density beings, human beings on this planet right now. In order for the creator to fully experience itself, it goes through a distortion or forgetting process of who and what we are. Because if we remembered at the onset of our lives who and what we truly are, then we would never choose the darker path. We would always view other not as other, because we know fundamentally that we are not, there is no other, that we are all one being. So in order for the creator to more authentically experience and explore itself and make an authentic choice to either go one way or the other, we go through a distortion or forgetting process. And that comes about by forgetting who and what we are when we incarnate on this planet and having the ability to choose. And the role that these negative actors play, people that come to mind for me, and I don't want to say definitively, some people listening might disagree. I highly doubt that on this podcast, but people like Bill Gates are there to offer us a choice. People like Klaus Schwab are there to offer us a choice. They are there to play the role, to show us what the negative aspect looks like. And then we have people on the flip side who are showing us what the positive polarity looks like. And then we discern for ourselves and make an authentic choice that is most in alignment with us through this forgetting process for our soul development. And to be clear on this, Ra says people can develop and grow their soul on the negative path, but they have to be very, very, very negatively polarized. People can develop that way, but the way Ra lays it out, as billions of years and billions of incarnations go on, both in this third density plane and then fourth density, fifth density, sixth density, then seventh, and then you get to a new octave of existence. At sixth density, the way that it's designed, we all come back to source, and we all come back to what we would call the positive polarity. But that is the purpose of these negative actors, is to offer us a choice. Outside of this physical reality, I would imagine that we are all understanding of, like, for soul development, soul growth, this is the role that we're playing in this lifetime to further develop consciousness.
So behind the veils, is there like a casting room somewhere where they get people to play the villain roles? I mean, Gates, Schwab, these guys are right out of the movies. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. They're just so stereotypical.
Especially Klaus Schwab, like a bald dude in like religious garb, like
Dr. Evil.
The perfect supervillain. I mean, I don't know. I think it's because, like, honestly, that's a good question. I know it's a joke, but it's like, damn, I don't know. Are we like actually like talking about this? All right, I'm going to play this role in this life. You're going to play this role. And then maybe next life we'll switch. I don't know. I don't know what that looks like, but I get the feeling that it's that outside of this life, when we're sort of looking down on what we're experiencing right here and right now, because there's an aspect of each of us that exists outside of linear time that is always connected to us, and we are all always connected to each other. I would imagine that it knows ultimately at the highest level that no matter what path is taken, we eventually all come back to the understanding of love and compassion. And it may take some souls a little bit more time to get there than others. But I think we eventually all turn back home and come back to love and compassion. And that's what the fundamental nature and fundamental fabric of reality is.
Yeah. I agree on that.
The super conscious or the high conscious. I mean, even mainstream science has come to recognize this in the 20th century, this idea of a super conscious that's above. And that's, of course, what we aim to achieve in those blissful states of breath work and yoga, that's centered, and the dualism is interesting, right? That's the engine that drives the reality. And I wonder, like, with the consciousness now becoming so interconnected because of the internet, and these other mechanisms as we become more of a global village, and what Ra kind of gets at, and other people like Paul Selig, if you know him, who channels some interesting stuff that kind of resembles Ra. There seems to be this concurrent idea that consciousness, this reality, is a collective reality, right? That our conscious kind of forms, shapes the Maya, shapes the matter. And I'm wondering now, because it seems to become, as Bear said, like these villains have almost become archetypes that make fun of themselves. It's becoming a joke. I wonder if our super conscious becomes so interactive with the consciousness on this plane that we are now rapidly creating almost a comical reality, because we can formulate and change it and shift it so quickly. I really see that it's becoming so pliable, and maybe this is kind of that aspect of reality that as we move into the age of Aquarius, or this more air kind of movable reality that people like Steiner and these other luminaries have talked about in our evolution of consciousness. Maybe that's what we're seeing now, is we're seeing, because we're so connected collectively, the reality is shifting and changing faster, and we're seeing more immediate effects. And maybe these villains are kind of our own kind of way to handle the evil, right? By making it so ridiculous. I don't know.
Yeah, like it's becoming, I don't want to say there's a split, but it's like there is a split. And what that looks like is people are polarizing to one path or the other faster now, right? So you see a clear like split in people, even though it's becoming increasingly obvious to someone like you, I, or Bear, or people listening, that it's so ridiculous, the agendas that are being played out. It's like so unbelievably obvious. It's like the meme. It's like, I'm not interested in conspiracy theories. I'm interested in, am I allowed to cuss on here?
We try to keep it.
You can do whatever you want.
Yeah. Well, I'll say, wake the heck up. It's so obvious theories. And it's like, that's what it is though, right? It's like, it's becoming so increasing, like so unbelievably obvious to people who are paying attention, who are understanding of these things. But that's the split in society. We are splitting. People are polarizing towards the negative path. People are polarizing towards the positive path. A lot more people are staying more in the middle. And that's what Jesus would have called the lukewarm, right? And what I think Jesus meant by that when he said, it is better to be hot or cold than it is to be lukewarm. If you are lukewarm, I'll spit you back out of my mouth. Think of it as him representing God embodied. I will spit you back out of my mouth, meaning that you will need to come back again until you can figure this out. I'm spitting you back out, back onto this planet or on another planet or another plane of existence, so that you have to experience this again until you learn to, through your own free will choice, to polarize positively or polarize negatively.
Yeah.
I think that's what we're experiencing right now.
So no riding the fence this time around.
Correct. If you ride the fence,
Yeah.
and it's not bad, it's not like an eternal hell place from my perception and understanding of it. You may have to relieve karmic debt and go spend some time somewhere to heal that. But I think you just come right back as in another third density body as another human being, continuing to exercise your free will until you choose one path or the other.
You could
Yeah.
say we
You
almost
know,
have that.
go ahead, Mike.
I was going to say, you could say we almost have an epidemic of riding the fence right now. Because
Oh, brother.
a new normal, or the normal. I want to go back to the way it was. I want to just watch football and drink beer and eat Cheetos. You know, and that is what's being propagated right now. It's being really, the reality is forcing the Jesus spitting us out. Like, really, it's time. Like, hey, you're gonna get with it, and you going to act in love and service to others and fix what's going on, or are you going to go down the dark, choose the darkness? Because it's kind of like people aren't going to be able to ride the fence much longer, it seems like.
Yeah. And to be clear on this too, in my perception of it, and I think Ra reiterates this so much, and so do like even Buddhist traditions, Taoist traditions, is the need to do the inner work, right? Like the need to actually reflect and bring about your own darkness to heal it, right? Like to do, like understand your inner faculties, do childhood trauma healing. Trauma is relative. Everyone has experienced some bit of trauma that they need to heal and reflect on. And I think it's so unbelievably important to do the work, because when you do the work internally to clean up your internal environment, free yourself of those negative emotions that have taken hold on you, the more you wake up to the toxicity that is being perpetrated on the entirety of humanity in the external environment, right? So for the people who have not done the work or don't want to go there, because it is very hard, especially if you've experienced quite a bit of trauma, it's hard to go there and feel those emotions again and bring them to the surface and deal with them. It's not easy work, but it is necessary work in order to heal and in order to get to the fundamental aspect of who and what we truly are, and make the authentic choice to express yourself as your whole self.
Yeah. You know, the inner journey, it's so important. It's not just about being still and coming to peace with yourself, all great stuff, but it's really so we can start getting the downloads, because there have been, you know, root races on this planet, and every root race. So I'm told, you know, people like Steiner and a lot of other sources talk about this, where each root race would develop a certain attribute within the collective. And you mentioned collective, I think, Mike. You know, collective understanding that it's really a unified force field or informational field that we all have access to. We really don't have to go to university or get teachers. If we know how to properly go inside, we'll get all the downloads. Now, there's one that Steiner talks about, a root race that was from a civilization we'll just call Mu or Lemuria. And what their attribute that they developed was the will force. And I bring this up because, Alec, you mentioned that. And, you know, this so-called free will or will force, what it's really about is mobilizing our own internal energy flow and letting it rise so that we can manifest our vision. And then also at the same time, draw our line in the sand so that other people aren't encroaching on our free will. And then, you know, later root races, you know, develop more attributes on the mental plane and, you know, all necessary attributes. But I think now is the time where we're drawing into those downloads from all the root races and needing to draw upon all those attributes in order to bring in with whatever's next. We don't just go overly mental like our world seems to be today. And we don't go just total into will force, which is like with the lack of the mental element or very little of it, and just living in that moment, so they all have their time and place. And what I see out there is, sorry, this is becoming a commentary, but what I see going on there, what I see going on more today is that people really need to tune into their will force, learn how to mobilize it, utilize it. And even in natural medicine, we associate it with kidney energy and certain things, and help people understand how they waste that energy and sort of lose that ability to really mobilize a strong force field to, my will be done. Anyway, any comments on that?
Well, something that you said there that really struck me, I don't remember exactly what it was, but it brought about this thought, tying it back to the law of one, that Ra talks about or Dawn, the person that asks Ra the questions during the channeling, asks Ra what percentage you would need to polarize, because there's a spectrum, right, of service to self, the negative path, and the service to other path, the positive path. And then there's a large spectrum in between. And Dawn asks Ra what percentages are required roughly to actually polarize and advance and go into higher realms on the positive path or the negative path. And for the negative path, Ra lays out that it requires 95% service to self. So think of someone who is knowingly manipulating other people, maybe wrapping up things in a shroud of virtue, trying to get people to buy in with their own free will to relieve some karmic debt for that person. I think of a lot of things that are going on with COVID come to mind with that, where it's like, oh, this is good for you. This is good for the planet. Buy into this, getting people to fall to their own demise. That's the negative path, 95%. But what Ross says about the positive path, and this is one of those things that hit me just like on an intuitive level, it just makes so much sense, is in order to polarize positively, all it requires is 51% service to others and 49% service to self, which strikes me as balance. And what you said there, I just remember what it was, talking about the line in the sand while also operating from a position of love and compassion and speaking authentically on who you are, right? That's what that balance is. You operate from a position of love and compassion, but you get to the internal workings of who and what you are. You express that authentically while in this lifetime, but then you also draw a line in the sand and you say, I will not allow someone else to impose their will upon myself or upon other people. Because yes, you could advance going 95% service to other, but you're going to be a martyr. You're just going to leave yourself up for other people to take over you and beat the crap out of you. And like, yes, that may help you positively polarize. And again, that percentage spectrum is 51% all the way to 100% service to other, right? But by being a martyr, you are leaving room for other people to have their will infringed upon and people to impose their will on them. By being balanced, 51% service to other, 49% service to self, and standing and saying, I will not allow you to do that to me, you are also making the same choice to defend for other people. So it more authentically gives them the ability to operate out of their free will in service to other, service to self path.
Yeah, well said. Well said. And we live in this time where a large portion of people have really been convinced that there's all these authorities in their life, and so it makes it pretty difficult just to have your own life, make your own decisions. When you're asking for permits and doing everything you're told to do, and so I don't see any way around the inner game here. There's just, I don't care what kind of paperwork we have or what kind of academics we have backing up our position. If we aren't coming from that singularity, that one source, so it really is what some people describe as a spiritual skirmish, what's going on now. So can you maybe address some of the work that you're doing just to support people and outer world and how to find that and how to change the whole societal situation?
Yeah. So the idea behind Health Freedom for Humanity came about roughly October of 2020. And I was sort of sitting looking around. I was like, wow, there really needs to be more of a community movement that shows that, like, we have Children's Health Defense, who is a great organization. We have ICANN, who is a great organization, but they are very top down in that, like, when you think of Children's Health Defense, you think of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. When you think of ICANN, you think of Del Bigtree. With Health Freedom for Humanity, I wanted to show, especially, like, really hit home the message that health freedom is a community-led movement from all walks of life. Like, we have people of all religions, all races, all socioeconomic backgrounds, all political affiliations that are all united in the common perception that every single individual should have a right to choose what is best for their own health without coercion or force, which is really, really, really simple. And it's crazy to me that an organization like this even needs to exist, but here we are. The point being, though, that we're really trying to show people that this is a community-led thing, that it is coming from the ground up. And we've actually just launched our California chapter, and we're in the middle of launching chapters in 47 other states and then 21 countries. And it'll be a slow rollout process, really just trying to create community. I've had people who are starting these chapters like, what do we do? What do we do? What do we do? And I want to instill in them the consciousness of not seeking outside of self constantly for someone to tell you what to do, tell you how to do it. The important thing is you determining what is best for you and your community at a community level and taking it from there, rather than constantly seeking outside of yourself to determine what is best. And then on top of that too, it's like what California is dealing with regards to health freedom is going to be different than what Texas is dealing with, or what Florida, or what the UK, or what Victoria in Australia is dealing with. So it's going to be different in each location. But the point is creating community around health freedom and the reality. I don't want to say the idea, the actual reality that each of us has the choice to choose what is best for our own health.
So it's a global, I love that it's a global thing you're doing, but you're basing it, you're grounding it in locality. So you're kind of embracing the law of one there, that we're all together, but also we have our own little aspect of ourselves we need to deal with. By the way, the LA chapter you started, a partner here and son of Barre Lando happened to live across the street from where you had the meeting and found themselves there. And it was awesome because they were able to, speaking of law of one, well, the law of attraction is part of that. And that seems to have pulled them in. They didn't even know this was happening. And
that's so rad.
It was like their spot they go to for just to kind of hang out at this golf course in Venice Beach. And we're there, and I was trying to connect them with some of the practitioners and speakers that were at Music and Sky on Telegram, and boom, they were all there in person. So they all got to meet, and now they're going to be connecting and hanging out. And what was really cool about that, Alec, too, was that from what I was told, there was a lot of media and Hollywood people there. So that's
what I heard. I heard quite a few people saying that, which is so rad. And, I can't say the name of this, but I was a part of a call, I'll say, with a bunch of very influential people, some ESPN executives and stuff like that, like 2.5, 3 months ago. And I was kind of like, why the heck am I here? Like, what am I doing here amongst all these guys? All like, we're in suit and tie. Some of them I recognize from being on ESPN and other organizations, some very well-known business coaches and CEOs of Fortune 500 companies. But they were all talking about how, like, hey, we are on the cusp of wanting to speak out against what's going on. We're really getting to the point where we feel like we need to unite and sort of stand up to this because it's getting ridiculous. So hearing that, and also being a part of hearing what you said about the LA chapter's meeting, and then also being a part of this call with a bunch of executives, it's really cool, because I really think we're getting to the point where more and more people, again, going back to the law of one, are having to polarize and choose to speak up on this, or, face repeating and coming back again over and over again until they figure it out.
Yeah. And I think, go ahead, Bear.
No, I was just going to say there's the opportunity. And, as a lot of people are waiting for the other shoe to drop, it's like, no. All the that's sort of the things that we're witnessing now, or they've been there for centuries. They're just out in full view now, but that's exactly where we want them. You know, when you're treating a body, one of the things you try to do is drive everything from the core to the surface and then, you know, out and be done with it. So that's exactly what's happening on the planet. But it was great. You know, Mike, you know, my son called me and said, Dad, I was at this thing and a bunch of people knew you, you know,
That's so
and then
cool.
so Mike told me, yeah, so then Mike connected, but we see this organically happening now where, you know, the tribes are gathering and, you know, what you described there when you're, you know, talking about what you're up to, it really sounds suspiciously like our original constitutional republic, you know, where we had the states were sovereign from the federal government, which was the weakest tier of organization. And then, you know, your county seats were even more sovereign. The townships were even more sovereign. And then each individual, you know, was the ultimate sovereign, albeit without subjects, you know, unlike the old monarchs. And it was really a beautiful system. And of course, the Constitution follows natural law. You know, it's a combination of a lot of great minds, including Native American, you know, input into its. So we have the perfect blueprint and it's all there for us. And I think it's just been waiting for us to catch up with where it's been at all along. And just like when Franklin said, well, a constitutional republic, if you can keep it, I think we're ready to keep it right now.
Yeah. And I'm really trying to focus on like decentralizing this organization. I'm really into just the decentralization of everything. And that's why I don't want this to be like a top down, like where there's one person in charge of health, freedom, for humanity, and then like everything branches off of that. I want it to be the other way where it's like, let's say a year or two from now, health, freedom, for humanity grows so much, you can't even tell who's who, who's what. Everyone's just a part of it. And you don't even know like, okay, we can take out this local chapter, but then there's hundreds of other ones and who are all doing their own thing. They're like all really different. I can't figure out what the organizational structure is. That's the whole point behind it, is like, everyone's a part of it from all walks of life. They can't label us. They already had trouble doing that when they came out with a hit piece on us in The Guardian, like 2 months ago. They were trying to frame us as profiteering off of the pandemic. And just based on going on our website, they couldn't really figure out how to frame us as super far right leaning. We had people from all walks of life, all races. They were just like kind of at an odds of what they could do or say. So I think we're having a massive effect in showing, going against the mainstream narrative, especially, that health freedom is a bunch of super far right leaning Trump supporting people. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, decentralization is key, and you know that's a big passion of mine, and I think that's spot on. And if you have you're basing this on tenets of like universal law, right? Like we're all should be free to choose. We should have the rights inherent that the Creator has given us, and that transcends all political, ethnic, you know, backgrounds. So yeah, they can't put their finger on natural law because it's like it's infinite, right? And I was just going to say, in terms of the Hollywood people, and this kind of ties in with what you're doing in decentralization, I'm sure a lot of those people don't want to be working for ABC or working for these massive corporations that don't have a creative inkling, right? They can't create inherently because of their service to self and where they're coming from. So what they do is they prey upon the creators who get routed into these corporations. And so if we can empower them to create their own networks, their own production companies, and that, to me, and what Bride and I were talking about, and what he came out so inspired, and what a lot of people were saying, is we are on the cusp of a renaissance, of an emergence of new art, of all this stuff coming out of truth and these universal laws that will actually be, I think, a new Hollywood. But it won't be Hollywood. It'll be called something else. It'll be decentralized. It'll just be creators doing their own art, doing their own works, and finally having the ability to distribute themselves without needing to go through these centralized middlemen. And I think that has been a massive, this has been propelled and expedited a lot faster thanks to the lockdowns and all these mandates and everything, because even people in the industry are seeing their livelihood being destroyed by this, even to those people that they used to worship. So
Yep.
it's definitely fracturing and falling apart. And we have the solutions. Cordal, by the way, we just launched our first couple test data nodes in hosting stuff. So for those familiar with Cordal, and I know Alec, you have a little bit of familiarity with that, we are moving towards phase 3, which will allow for complete decentralized hosting on a decentralized system, so that you'll be able to have, for instance, Health Freedom for Humanity on its own node, data node that is completely distributed across the world and all these other nodes. And there's no center point of attack. So the GoDaddies or the domain registrars won't be able to censor or take you down. And, gosh, we're right on the cusp of a revolution of it.
So important, man. Like everything you're doing with Cordal is unbelievable, and I'm still trying to understand exactly how it works. I just talked to Jason. I was like, please just take this and do with what you will. I have no idea how it works, but it's so important, so unbelievably important. I've said this a few times, like I'm trying to, and everyone else should be as well, do everything you can to just decentralize your life in so many ways from the system. Make yourself self-reliant, make your community self-reliant. I know of, I can't name names, but some people in California who have taken their kids out of the school system, found other families to take their kids out of the school system, found some teachers to pull out of the school system, and have their own underground schools outside the system. And that's what it requires. That's what it requires, is making yourself self-reliant outside the system. And instead of trying to petition this system to change, trying to beg it to change, trying to, attack the system, just go take your energy and form new systems that are so much more beautiful, that are so much more appealing, that they make the old systems obsolete. That's where we need to be focusing our attention on. And a project like Cordal is exactly what that is.
Yeah, Mike does the same thing for me. I just say, hook me up. I don't get it, but I've got my BlackBerry here and all ready to go, and Raspberry Pi, what do you call it?
I know, and I need
so
to
anyway,
get dialed with that. And also, Alec, I'd love to get you dialed, if we haven't already, on a Raspberry Pi. It looks like this, and I need to get mine reconnected.
Yeah, please. I don't even know what that is, but please, yes.
It's just it's a little mini computer that it uses. You could run on a small solar panel if needed.
Oh, wow.
So, and as long as you have internet connection for now, we are working towards having mesh networking. That's down the line once we have a vast network. And we're talked about satellite or balloons, whatever your perspective is on that, using those to also connect, but we just have to be online together. But you could use a solar panel in this. And Bear, we do have the new operating system all dialed. It's way easier to use. I'll get it set up. I need to get you set up ASAP and start minting, because that's the thing. It's like, I'm paid some of our people. This was amazing, that came and worked for us at Fort Music and Sky in court. They're like, can you pay us in court? I'm like, yes, I'll pay you in court. Are you kidding me? So it's already happening. People don't want the dollar. They see every second that you have a dollar bill in your wallet, it's losing its value. It's the succubus money system. So very, very powerful stuff. And yeah, we'll get you dialed. For Health Freedom for Humanity, do you have a foundation behind it? How did you set up? Because this is something Bear and I have been working on pretty intensely. Well, Bear, especially with some of his friends, in this new ways of setting up a business to work in the private. So you're not, going through the traditional 501c or the in the public through the
This
government
is
system.
such a good question, because so we are set up as a 501c3, but I have been looking into setting us up as a church, full disclosure. Like, I'm totally okay with saying that, rather than setting up as a 501c3 for many of the things you're alluding to right now.
So yeah, we're heavy into that right now. So we're land-based. So the first thing we're focused on is finishing up our land patent. So we're actually have standing on the land. Then is our change of status. But rather than a change of status based on state citizenship or whatever, which is all legit, and I've actually done a lot of that in the past, we're talking about change of status according to the League of Nations, which is a whole nother tier of reality that gives you, another, good buffer, we'll say, from the beast. And then you combine that with trust, irrevocable trust, private membership associations, and then LLCs to simply interface if you have to run a business or if you need a wholesale number, resale number, or something like that. And you're really doing everything by the book, by everybody's book. You're staying in honor. You're not struggling with anybody, but you don't take on any liability. And the most interesting thing is when you structure yourself right, now the IRS starts working for you. Now I'm in hopes that the IRS won't be around too much longer, but all they are is, of course, is an independent foreign bookkeeping organization for the banking cartel.
Yep.
But if you do things properly, then if you have any things to settle, you go to the IRS and say, hey, fix this for me, and put them in their proper position, which is employee. That wouldn't have a job or any energy or currency to work with unless we existed in the first place. So all the pieces are coming together, and it's very gratifying to me because we've been down a lot of rabbit holes. I've taken a lot of arrows in my back by doing stupid things, just trying to figure things out. But it seems like just right now, perfectly with everything we're talking about, including what people like Mike are doing with getting the electronics on board, because communication is so important. So we really now are on the precipice of having the best of both worlds in every imaginable way.
Well, I have to consult with you guys then on that, because especially since you've already taken so many arrows in the back figuring it out. I am so new to this. I won't even pretend to know what the heck I'm talking about with this. I have the understanding of it. I've watched quite a few videos of, I don't know if you're familiar with Robert Michael, and I've talked with him several times. Yeah. So
we're working with him.
Yeah, he's great. So I'm understanding of it, but it literally is like using the English language in a completely different way. It's like speaking another language, but using English. It's so like a whole nother thing. I explained it to my wife. I was like, this would be like me having to relearn germ versus terrain theory and the intricate details of that, except for times 10. It would take that much longer for me to really, really, really fundamentally understand this.
Yeah. And in the legal system, we refer to that as color of law. Black means white, white means black. So you just have to know the game and understand, more importantly, who you are in the game and your options of whatever character, whatever role you want to play in the game. We were never told there were options or that there's even a game in the first place. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's all coming together. So we talked a little bit, off air. I think we're off air about you maybe going into the farming business with or just lifestyle. To me, it's a lifestyle. It really is. And it's a wonderful lifestyle. But anything cooking in that level or ways you see yourself developing in that direction?
Yeah, I mean, so there's just so much potential because we're on 70 acres in the middle of the woods near the Kansas River. We have a greenhouse that we're building. We have a lot of fertile land that we need to figure it out and put some topsoil on it, but we're looking to really start a farm here. We just don't know what the hell we're doing whatsoever. So also needing to consult with people on that, but there's so much potential here. And I'm obviously very in tune and interested with regenerative agriculture and regenerative farming. And having talked with Rob Herring, also Rob Reiner, who I'm not sure if you're familiar with, he's the CEO of Crop Swap, which is an app that essentially, if you are growing organic produce, you can put your organic produce on this app and sell it directly to the consumer within 48 hours of being picked. So in certain locations in California right now, if people subscribe to certain farms on Crop Swap, they will have 40 pounds of organic produce delivered to their doorstep within 48 hours of being picked for $40 a week. So it's an unbelievable project. So I've been talking with him, also been talking with Nick Wallace, who is out of Iowa. He runs Wallace Farms. And I don't know if you're familiar with the meat stick company. It's from a regenerative agriculture meat stick company called Nick Sticks, and they come 2 in a pack, but that's his farm. So I've been talking and consulting with a few people to try to figure out exactly what we want to do, but we still have literally no idea what we're doing, but it's a process. And luckily you told me right before we started recording, farming is 95% winging it. So we're full on winging it right now.
And you just learn to tune in, and the land and whatever you're growing is going to tell you exactly what to do. But, just starting out, it's the best possible place to be in the surfing world. We call it a grommet. And grommets always have the most fun because you're on a new adventure and just stepping into new territory. So you'll have a great time. And with decentralized farming, we say we have a farm here. It's really, it's called Alfa Vedic Gardens because we're more of a boutique medicinal herb farm. When you say farm, it connotes rows of corn and that sort of thing. And
which
we
is
don't
not
do
what
that,
it's supposed to be anyway, though.
Exactly. Yeah. And that was my point, is we all have our little niche in the growing world. And if somebody wants, some bulk chow gulan from me and you're growing something else, I'm really going to look up this crop swap. I've never heard of it. That sounds great. And
It's
what's
awesome.
great about it
Rob,
is
the guy behind it is an amazing, very passionate human being. He's awesome.
It's a legit app. Alec mentioned it a while ago in one of our Telegram groups, and I vetted it, and it's really brilliant because it's decentralizing the CSA design, the model that market farmers have been really doing successfully, which is that membership idea, right? Where you're a small market farm that has a specific amount of members that get weekly shipments to them. So they pay a monthly fee then to have produce coming to them, depending where you live. SoCal, for instance, when we lived in LA, we had a membership, and every week we get a box of produce. So what he's done is they've done is taken that model and then decentralized it even more. So now you can get it from multiple places in your area, depending on what your likes are. And then so you can have more variability and more robustness in the market there. So once again, we can use this technology for all those that say the internet's bad and cell phones are bad and all that. Yes, there's aspects of centralization that we don't like, but if we can get private phones going and use these apps, we can really thrive. So what's funny is I do need to connect with him because I've been working on a decentralized bartering application to go on court that would be revolving around privacy, but also the private commerce back and forth. Similar idea.
Dude, I'll hook you up with him. Rob would love to talk to you because he is the one who sort of helped me come up with the phrase "decentralize your life." Like that is what his whole life and the whole intent behind this is based on. I mean, he just cannot stand the big agricultural companies and big food and obviously big pharma as well. And he's trying to get farmers outside of their grasps so that they can actually make more sense on the dollar. First off, because it cuts out the distributor, cuts out the grocery store. And then also people are eating real foods at a much cheaper price.
Oh, dude. Yeah. The just-in-time big ag system is failing. Look what's going on in South Africa right now. We're looking at potential millions starving because of the social unrest that was developed and engineered by the banksters, by whatever you want to go deep. That's a rabbit hole. But if you guys know what's going on in South Africa right now, it is frightening. And because they are now raiding the trucks before they can get to the markets, the just-in-time system is failing there. That was built on monoculture. And they also, they shook out all the white farmers there and pushed them out. And they're now seeing impending disaster. And we know that's a model for disruption that's coming our neighborhood near us. So this is Barre and I talk about this all the time. It's like, support your local farm, start growing your own food. That is the future.
And what you guys are talking about is really the next step beyond farmers markets, because farmer markets still aren't COVID police proof, if they want to go in there and bust it up and wear a mask or whatever else they have up their sleeve. This just goes right beyond that as well. So this is marvelous. And it's just an example of how people all over the world are tapping into their inner resources and just saying, nice try. And as you said, Alec, rather than try to fight the system, just develop a better widget.
That's all it takes, right? Because once you do that and you actually live it and practice it, people look at the system they're in and they see you and everyone else over there and they're like, damn, that looks way better. Those people are having a great time. Let's just go over there.
Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah.
So
go ahead, Barre.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, what is your vision, Alec, for where you see this all going in terms of health freedom for humanity with your podcast? You recently jumped in this out of the military. And I actually would love to know a little bit of your, your insight into where the military is going and what was the kind of vibe that you had being in there with people in there. What are they thinking about what's going on right now? And I know you were kind of leaving out of the Trump regime into the Biden regime. And I know there was this Q conspiracies and all this stuff with the military coup d'etat. But really, what was your experience, and where do you see the military fitting into our future?
So this is such a good question. So there's so many ways I could attack this too. So first off, the military is so good with compartmentalization. So like people that are in the space that you and I are in would send me stuff and be like, hey, have you heard anything about this? I'm like, no, I'm an assistant S3, meaning I'm an operations officer at a basic training unit in Oklahoma. So I was like a nobody, a somebody, because I was a captain, but also like a nobody. But also I was so, this goes back to some of like my trauma healing. This was more of it that came to the surface. I was so afraid speaking the way that I was, over this past year and a half while being in the military, that I was just like counting down the days. I'm like, I need to just get out. I need to get out. I need to get out. I was so afraid of getting in trouble because I was I had someone tell me, amongst all the people in the Department of Defense, you're probably the most outspoken voice on some of these issues. And I was like, that is a very scary thing to hear. But it was elements of my childhood trauma that still were resurfacing, where I was afraid of authority, that eventually came to head. And I had to deal with a lot of those emotions associated with it that I guess I had suppressed and didn't realize I had. And that all came in the form of when this article came out in The Guardian I want to say it was April, the very beginning of April. And this was 3.5 weeks before I was to be done with the Army completely, like out. I was done officially on April 29th or 30th. And this reporter contacted me finding out that I was the executive director of Health Freedom for Humanity. And he said, here's your right to reply. This is what we are going to write in this article. You are a former Army lieutenant. So he had found my U.S. Army World Class Athlete Program profile on Google, on a Google search. And it says that I was an Army lieutenant. So he probably did some math in his head and it said former. So he was like, okay, this guy's no longer in the Army, but he was. And I was like, I'm in the clear. This isn't going to draw a lot of attention to anything. I'll be good. A week later, he responds again and says, because I didn't reply to him, he said, we have confirmed with the U.S. Army Public Affairs Office that you are currently serving as a captain. And I was just like, oh boy, here we go. And somehow, and I think there's elements of being divinely protected in this, I wasn't blasted everywhere. Like he wrote the article, but I was so kind when I eventually responded. And what Health Freedom for Humanity is about, you can't really frame that in a bad way, that we fundamentally believe every single human being has the right to determine what's best for their own health. How can you possibly frame that as something bad? So the article came out. They said that I like U.S. Army Captain Alec Zeck is the executive director, blah, 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 blah. And my commander, so my boss's boss, my brigade commander, contacted me and he was like, hey, why am I getting contacted by the Public Affairs Office of the U.S. Army talking about you being an anti-vaccine conspiracy theorist? So I was like, wow, I really have flown under the radar this whole time, because I really didn't make everyone aware on my social media posts that I was in the Army. Like most often when I would talk to people, like talk to someone like Mike behind the scenes, I'm like, I'm a U.S. Army captain. They're like, what? You're in the Army? And I was very quiet about it. But essentially that like, now that I'm out, I can speak freely. And it was just interesting how that all played out and helping me heal that wound of being so afraid of authority. But to speak to what was happening in the Army, I can say fully now that the Army is going right in line with this sort of communist subversion that many of our institutions are currently experiencing right now. And it's a very scary thing to see. And I think it's because in the Army, although, especially as an officer, especially being taught at West Point, we are taught to critically think. We are taught to always choose the harder right over the easier wrong. But when you have someone above you and then someone above them saying that this is the right thing to do, this here is the right thing to do, and you have every superior officer following right align with that, you don't question it. You're not going to question it, especially like as you and Barre and all the people listening know, when they have, quote, science that they put out that is, here is this vaccine is efficacious. Anyone who questions this is a crazy conspiracy theorist who's trying to deliberately cause harm. It's those sentiments that are pushed in the Army. And to the person who has not had the experience that I've had, where I saw my mom transform with the help of Dr. Kelly Brogan, then saw my wife transform, they're going to buy into that automatically because that is what everyone else in the Army is buying into. And then the other piece of that, aside from the health piece, because the Army is fully in line with that and coercing soldiers who are resisting, coercing them very, very, very heavily to receive this shot outside of any science to back it up, because there is no science to back it up, obviously. But even aside from that, they're also very much in a weird way where you can't really put your finger on it. They're upholding many communist ideals and really, really, really trying to get the military to buy into this very leftist agenda. And I want to be clear with this. And I think it almost goes without saying, but I feel like I have to. I am not at all right-leaning. I'm very much a voluntarist, and I think the entirety of the federal government is corrupt. But the point is, we cannot deny that there is a full-blown authoritarian, super far left-leaning mentality that is taking over. And at the least, more often than not, the people that are more right-leaning, although I do not agree with them that Trump was, actually won the election, and that I don't agree with any of that. I think it's all show personally, and I'm not offended if anyone disagrees with that. But the point is that at least people on that side of the spectrum are more open to freedom and freedom of choice. So that's why you see people that are more so aligning with people that are either on the right or libertarian minded. And the Army, it is really disturbing to see the Army go full blown leftist in their mentality.
Yeah, that's really disturbing in light of what we see happening with the U.S. interests subservient to other international interests. And so is there any pushback within the military itself? Is that highly polarized? Is it pretty much all, overwhelmingly leaning in one direction? And part two of that question, is there enough within just the regular ranks of folks that will refuse the jab in order to, are there enough of those people that could make a difference and even catch the attention of the hierarchy to say, well, maybe we can't push them that far?
So this is a really good and very timely question, because I have been on a few phone calls with some officers in the Army who are very skeptical of this shot, as they should be, do not want to receive this shot. And they're trying to figure out exactly the proper steps to take. And we, and myself and two other West Point graduates that are no longer in the Army as well, and are very understanding of everything that's going on, all the agendas at play, are trying to determine how best we can help these people. I do think that there's enough pushback in the military to where September 1st, they're throwing this date out that by September 1st, the Department of Defense will mandate the shot for all soldiers, airmen, Marines, and I'm missing one. Soldiers, airmen, Marines, and sailors. Yeah, Navy. I forgot the Navy.
Never forget the Navy.
I always forget the Navy though, because we say beat Navy, being West Point graduates, so I always think of them last. But the point is, I think it's just a scare tactic to try to get those who are currently dissenting to comply, because the last I saw, and I can't put an exact number on it, but the last I saw, there was still a large portion, a substantial amount of people within the military who are saying no to the shot despite all of these coercive measures. And what those coercive measures have looked like is, as an example, at West Point, there were what we have is between our sophomore and junior year, what's called cadet field training. It's a training exercise that we have to do in the summertime. They were actually taking the unvaccinated cadets and putting them in tents, like a 20-person drash tent, putting 35 to 40 of them all in this one tent, co-ed, men and women in there together, having to be masked 24/7 in the heat of the summer. Meanwhile, their vaccinated counterparts are able to be completely unmasked and living in open bays with air conditioning, plenty of room. So, and then on top of that, they had the head medical officer at West Point I forget her name. She's a colonel, but she was going into the unvaccinated tent. We were getting reports from the unvaccinated cadets that she would go into the unvaccinated tent like every other day and essentially call them science deniers, grandma killers, saying that she can't wait to jab the shot in their arm once it gets mandated. And these are the measures that that soldiers. It's not just at West Point. We're seeing similar things happen at every duty station across the United States and across the globe, really, where soldiers are being coerced in this way. And it's really sad. And like, yes, I understand that the wars that we have involved ourselves with and the direction that the military has gone, even with the war on terror, is not what we are being told, right? And what we have signed up for as soldiers is not actually conducive to upholding freedom in any way whatsoever. We're actually just carrying out the directives of multinational corporations and these tyrannical government systems. But these people are still human beings with good intention. So we should still be doing everything that we can to fight for them and to ensure that they have the right to choose what is best for their own health. So we're trying to determine the best course of action with that. And I think there is enough people in the military who are at least dissenting when it comes to the shot. But the direction of the military with regards to a very leftist agenda, I think the military is completely captured in that way.
Yeah. Yeah, I find it funny that Trump, who supposedly cared so much about the military, was pushing the vax. You know, it's like that makes no sense whatsoever. It's completely weakening your soldiers. And I gotta imagine Trump was getting intel on that. That's why that was the biggest red flag, red herring for me with Trump, is he was a big pharma stooge, just like all the rest, probably working right for BlackRock and Vanguard, right, for his Jesuit masters. Really interesting, though. Obviously, we know the Biden administration is on the same par with Soros and the globalists and doesn't want a strong U.S. military, or at least in a way they're transitioning to a transhumanistic controlled soldier that will be completely out of free will. This is the design that they're moving towards, so that the new model of the soldier will be more of like a cyborg that will then just be controlled by centralized servers, right? Where they're like how the drones of today will be the soldiers of tomorrow.
Brother, you're spot on. And this is just real quick. This is exactly why I had this thought the other day, and it's really very obvious. The reason, outside of all of the science, because there is none to justify, even if you buy into the germ theory of disease, there is no science to justify coercing the rest of these soldiers who are dissenting to receive this shot. None. Even if you buy into the concept of herd immunity, right, which I don't think is actually a thing, there's plenty of, quote, herd immunity, according to their, quote, science, that shows these soldiers have absolutely no reason to take the shot. Even, again, using the germ theory approach, this shot has not been shown to limit what's called, quote, transmission or confer immunity whatsoever. All it does is reduce symptoms. So outside of any logic whatsoever, they're coercing these soldiers to receive this shot. Really what I think they're doing, which is right in line with what you're saying, is they are trying to remove any other dissenters who actually logically and critically think outside of the military and just rid the military of them. So all they have left is exactly what you're describing.
Yeah.
And isn't it interesting that in past times in other cultures, the ultimate warrior was first taught how to go inward and conquer themselves, know themselves, and really get in touch with their true essence, and then, you know, really become the most efficient fighting machine possible, because they didn't even have a desire to fight in the first place unless it was honorable to defend themselves, and they would never cause harm for harm's sake. Whereas now, you know, we have what you're describing. So quite an incredible change. And then meanwhile, you look at other places, you know, like in the old Soviet, you know, Russia, where they're training like real soldiers. Again, you look at those guys and they could probably kick ass over most of the folks that are enlisting right now in our country. So yeah, it's a real unsettling kind of trend. And I'll go out on a further limb, and you've been very generous with your time here, you know, and I'm really delighted that we get to talk to you tomorrow, because there's so much more I'd like to talk to you about. So we'll see you over on your platform. But the last comment, you know, when it comes to the vax, in my experience over 40 years of bioterrain medicine, in my opinion, backed up by hardcore firsthand experience and clinical proof. There is no such thing as a vaccine in the history of vaccines that prevents anything. They do not prevent disease. In fact, disease is a whole nother rabbit hole to go down. It's not even what we think it is. And then generationally, each of these vaccines have been, gone to the next level of to where they are now, just overt genetic modification, deliberately designed to shut down the bandwidth of human perception to make us less than divine. And that's where we're headed.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'd love to like share on that too. The things that I've come across lately, obviously I've interviewed Stefan Lanka, interviewed Dr. Cowan, Dr. Kaufman, Amanda Vollmer. The two things that really shoot the entire germ theory, especially when it comes to virology, in the foot are Stefan Lanka's recent control experiments, where he showed pretty conclusively multiple times now, and from what I'm hearing, it's going to be published in a peer-reviewed journal here soon, that the conditions of the experiment in a vero cell culture or any cell culture type where they are said to have proven that there is a pathogenic disease causing microscopic particle, the conditions of the experiment are the cause of what the cell experiences, which is the cytopathic effect, rather than the supposed infectious material from the sick person, right? And Stefan Lanka is showing that pretty conclusively. And then also, ironically, John Enders, who developed this process, had said that himself. He said, when we've controlled this experiment and not introduced snot from a sick person, it still experienced the same cytopathic effect. Further research needs to be done. But then John Enders went on to win a Nobel Prize. And because he won a Nobel Prize, they just adopted everything else he had developed, including the cell culture method of virus isolation. But that piece of evidence, one, and then two, something that one of Dr. Cowan's followers found and sent to Dr. Cowan was a study titled "Appearances Can Be Deceiving," and I think it was negative SARS-CoV-2 renal biopsies show what appears to be viral-like inclusions. And essentially what this study showed, these electron micrograph images of a cell experiencing a cytopathic effect, although they had tested negative in multiple ways, PCR, and then I think two other ways for SARS-CoV-2, these cell micrograph images had cellular debris that looked identical to what they are calling an isolated SARS-CoV-2. And this goes with exactly what Stefan Lanka, Tom Cowan, Andrew Kaufman, you both, and everyone else have been saying for so long, that viruses are synonymous with exosomes and extracellular vesicles, and all they are is cellular debris. They are not pathogenic disease-causing agents. And I think these two pieces of evidence together, along with more of these experiments that Stefan Lanka are doing, are shooting the entirety of virology in the foot. And I think it's time for this fraudulent science, really pseudoscience, to end.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe tomorrow we'll have more time to talk about, I used to do in-house labs on every single patient, thousands of people over many years. And one of the main things that I'd measure on everybody before this was even a discussion was cell debris. And, we can elaborate more on what that meant to me and how we would use it as a clinical barometer for people to get back their health. And also later on, that cell debris, of course, containing, DNA material, could be used very handily to justify the existence of these so-called pathogens. So, and the one thing, I'd say that cured me of any belief in germ theory and whether or not vaccines are good or otherwise is just when I started seeing vaccine damaged kids. And just seeing heartbroken parents whose lives were changed, that, the kids' lives were changed forever. We did develop good protocols to retrain their nervous system and recover a lot of them, but it's absolutely heartbreaking. So, when it came to my own kids, it wasn't even a question. There's no way I would, even expose them to that kind of filth. I wouldn't expose my worst enemy to that kind of filth.
Yeah. Yeah, it's unbelievable. And I mean, I've witnessed that with myself too. I mean, both of my kids are completely unvaccinated and they're so unbelievably healthy. And the more we've come across people who have completely unvaccinated children, the more we confirm that they are the healthiest kids around. They are so much more healthy than their peers who are vaccinated. And that's just the reality. And then you have on top of that, multiple peer-reviewed studies just in this past year by Jack Lyons Wheeler, Dr. Paul Thomas, and then Brian Hooker. I think 3 or 4 studies have come out comparing the health outcomes of unvaccinated versus vaccinated kids. And they show conclusively that the unvaccinated children are much healthier than their vaccinated peers. And when you put the context in of what you're talking about, that no virus ever has ever been shown to cause disease or really ever been proven to exist, it's obvious that vaccines, all they are is poison. They have no benefit whatsoever.
Yeah. They are the prime movers and shakers of disease over the last 150, 200 years. And one thing I'll say, Barre, and then I'll let you chime in, then we got to wrap it up. The qualitative aspects of the health, because I have 2 children who are also never been pricked, and the spiritual qualitative aspects of what they show, they're tapped in. They're seeing other realms. They're vibrant souls. They are connected. They are true humans. They are divinity. They are the divine coming through. And I get emotional when I bring this up, because that is the end game, is to completely disconnect us from our divine nature. And it's just so disheartening to see their friends and fellow, classmates who have gone down this other channel, who are shells of human beings. And so, yes, props to you for doing this for your children, because they will be the ones who inherit this world. Go ahead, Barre.
Thank you.
Yeah, the only comment I was going to say is they absolutely lower IQ. Period.
So when I was having my initial conversations with Barre, because I was blessed to have him as a friend and as someone to look up to, and a mentor.
What a good friend. He was in on this before with so many other people.
I would call him like, Blake, my wife, she's pregnant, and we're coming up to it. She's an RN. We're looking at all factors, and give me the short cliff notes on why not to do this thing. And that was one of the number one things, is like, your kid's IQ will be drastically defected, and your kids, if by maintaining their health and not having those jabs, they will be top of their class. They will be just so above and beyond the spiritual side. Just the IQ part is so true. So true. Yeah. Well, hey, Alec, thanks so much, man. This has been just absolutely epic, bro. We could talk to you all day. I mean, I wanted to go deeper into the raw material, and actually tomorrow maybe we can talk a little bit about Edgar Cayce and how he had talked about the law of one before those channelings.
Dude, let's do it. That's why I'm so pumped that we get to talk to you tomorrow, because we get to just continue on this conversation where we left off.
Yeah, there's a lot more in depth that shows that those channelings are not just, someone's imagination. Anyways, thank you so much. This has been such a powerful transmission. I hope everybody who's been listening has really enjoyed this. You can find all about Alec's work at healthfreedomforhumanities.org, healthfreedomforhumanities.org, and in the Way Forward.
The Way Forward spelled FWRD.com, and you can find us there. We're still editing that website a little bit, but that's where you can find us.
Fantastic. And your podcast is crushing. You have all of our favorite people on it. I feel so aligned with you. Barre and I appreciate you so much, brother. We look forward to connecting with you tomorrow. Is that going to be live, or is that just a recording that you put out
That's
later?
A pre-recorded. I need to consult with you on that too, because you have the whole tech space figured out, and I'm like a 75, 80-year-old man that has no idea what's going on.
Don't count yourself so short. You're crushing it, dude. Your Telegram is destroying it right now. So good work for you, brother. And everybody, thanks for joining us today. If you resonated with this conversation, please give us a like, a share with your friends and family, depending on what platform you're following us on. You can find all these on Odyssey, which we recommend supporting and going on Odyssey. We still are on YouTube for the time being, but I'll be interested to see how long this one lasts, because we did go there. But D Live is our main point of transmission live right now. I do understand Odyssey. I got to look into this, is doing live streaming now. So I got to get tapped into that. We'll start focusing on that too. I do want to embrace Odyssey and Library until Cordal has our own streaming and YouTube type service. Thank you guys so much. Dr. Lando, thanks again for holding space here. Such wise words. We appreciate you so much. And we'll let you get off to your family who's visiting. And everybody, get outside, get your feet in the soil, go plant something, go on a hike. I'm going to go right now and take my dogs for a walk to the river and dive into the cleansing waters of the Smith. Thanks to everybody who visited us recently and everybody who went to Music and Sky. If you are interested in finding out more about Music and Sky, go to musicandsky.com. We have a growing, amazing community on Discord. And for those looking to join our Alpha Vedic community, which is just crushing it as always, join us on Telegram at t.me/Alpha Vedic. Also join us on Discord at alphavedic.com/Discord. We love you. We appreciate you. We'll see you next week. And we'll announce on our Telegram when our podcast with Alec is live as well. So you're not going to want to miss that. Thanks, guys. Take it easy.